It looks like the Chewbaccas have a serious competitor in building anarcho-capitalism. Yeah, I'm talking about the newly minted president of Argentina. The main points of Kev's mind-boggling projects were recalled by the caustic comrade Karmanov immediately after the announcement of the election results. To quote, Miley wants to legalize trafficking in children and human organs, abolish healthcare, education and transportation, that is, to disperse the line ministries. Let the free market decide for itself. Give up monetary sovereignty and switch to the US dollar. He also says his dead dog Conan talks to him from beyond the grave and gives him economic policy advice. More Xavier Miley calls for militarization of the institutions of power in the transition period, building for-profit states on private prisons, making it easier to incarcerate people, real sentences for any little thing without fines, introducing forced labor from prisoners, lowering the age of juvenile recognition, and creating a nationwide network of surveillance cameras with facial recognition technology. In general, it so happens that the main loser here is the president of a neighboring country known to all of us. He doesn't realize how powerful this dude is to rock the world's dance floor. There's no way to cover that with a meat attack. The level of the show here is just a couple orders of magnitude higher. No one will give a shit about the country of 404 in Israel when this kind of fun kicks off live. End of stats. Which is what I'd like to say. The odds of the start described to the merrymaker are realistically high. As if to hint at the statement of the freshly minted candidate for foreign minister in the new government, Diana Mondino, who said that the country will refuse to join BRICS and stop interacting with the authorities of China and Brazil, which, in fact, at the moment are Argentina's key trading partners. If anyone thought you've seen all of this somewhere before, you haven't. The methodology is exactly the same, according to which the citizens of our neighboring country have been turned against us since 1991. Only this time the torpedo of the next natives driven into poverty will be molded against Brazil, apparently in order to break the BRICS, whose total GDP has already surpassed the similar indicator of the decrepit G7. In general, their techniques don't change. As they say, it works, don't touch it. It's working. And the current case with the well-known country next to us does not convince customers at all. To the contrary, for, as journalist Nosovich stated on the occasion, the same approach has been applied by them many times after 1991 and has been successful. To quote, exactly 20 years ago, in November 2003, three events occurred simultaneously that predetermined everything we live with today in the post-Soviet space and in Russia-US relations. Special operation to remove pro-Russian Lithuanian President Rolandos Paksas from office, Europe's first impeachment of a legally elected president. The disruption at the very last moment of the reunification of Transnistria and Right Bank Moldova, which, with Moscow's mediation, had already practically closed the Transnistrian conflict. The revolution of Rosgruzia. The United States is behind all three events. The operation of the Lithuanian security services to remove the Kremlin agent Paksas was supervised by the CIA, which was not even particularly hidden. Moldovan President Voronin was contacted by the U.S. ambassador in Chisinau, who categorically demanded not to sign the Kazakh Memorandum, which had already been initialed and which transformed Moldova into a federation and returned Transnistria to it as an autonomy. Everything is clear about the Americans and Saakashvili. By such actions, the U.S. has made it clear that, 1. They will not allow figures sympathetic to Russia to come to power in the republics of the former Soviet Union and will overthrow them by any available means. They will not allow Russia to be a mediator of relations in the post-Soviet space, will prevent the settlement of neglected conflicts, and will preserve potential hotspots in Russia's near abroad. They will create anti-Russian regimes in the former Soviet republics that will multiply conflicts along Russia's borders. Why did this policy transition happen? The version is so, because after 3 years of working with Putin in Washington in 2003, they realized that control and management over them is impossible. And we need to move to contain Russia, because a sovereign Russia has the kind of potential that poses a threat to American global leadership. As a result, the post-Soviet space has become a space of chronic confrontation. And we have what we have. They are building trenches on the border with Transnistria, although 20 years ago this border almost disappeared. If the Cossack Memorandum had been signed, everyone would have long forgotten about the Transnistrian conflict. As for Lithuania and its current psychedelic state, if 20 years ago the issue of transit to Kaliningrad was successfully resolved, today the words Suval Corridor and NATO Inland Sea smack of World War III. Worst of all, the internal factors in these stories are purely secondary. There is not and never has been hatred between Kaliningraders and Lithuanians. Equally, Transnistria is far from being a Serbian province. The military conflict there broke out to the horror of both sides, was quickly extinguished, and since then Transnistrians and Right Bank Moldovans have no hatred for each other. Everyone would have agreed on everything among themselves long ago, if there were no overseas players, who instead of living people and nations see only pawns on a chessboard. End quote. What would you like to say? The fresh example of Argentina vividly illustrates that the living people themselves are helping the overseas oligarchs to pit some natives against others. For among living people there is a large percentage of infantiles who will believe any nonsense, as long as the person voicing this nonsense behaves confidently and broadcasts cheerfully, broadcasting everything that patients with personal developmental delays are so addicted to. Infantilists, unfortunately, do not think, but seek what Comrade Marikoski reminded us of the other day, for the umpteenth time. To quote from his article, I once read a caustic account of experiments in introducing the practice of thematic discussions in graduate and undergraduate courses. The authors of the report noted that one of the main problems turned out to be the lack of understanding, by the honors students, of the very meaning of the concept of discussion. At first, the youth is, to put it bluntly, dumb and tries to guess the right words, and when told that they must defend their point of view, that defense usually boils down to repeating their opinion in a more emotional tone. After the years of schooling are behind us, to a considerable number of respected contemporaries the understanding of these elementary definitions never comes. Noting that doesn't make them fools. Or at least it doesn't make them bigger fools than me. They simply lack clarity about a number of concepts, and they are not aware of it, nor do they wish to be. Where are we going with this? This phenomenon points out with ruthless clarity, we respectable people don't usually need knowledge, reasoning, or information in general in its pure, abstracted meaning. If they were truly needed, esteemed humanity, Povalna would have developed philosophical reflexes long ago, and discussions on the internets would begin with clarification of the concepts used, not the ramblings of what author what you're smoking. No, our communication comes down to completely different things for the most part. In the course of it, very different prizes are sought and given away. I am unlikely to upset my esteemed friends by saying that prizes are still a subjective population value expressed in subjective status and belonging to a protected, privileged strong group. The goals of our communication are irrational but practical. We communicate to become stronger and calmer, and even if we need to really understand something to do that, we'll try all the other options first. End quote. It follows from this banal, if the surrounding people broadcast the confidence that everyone will be kind, it is only necessary to hand over your fate to a professional clown, like in our neighboring country, then for a personally immature temptation to follow the example of Ani H. surrounding becomes overwhelming. After all, such behavior promises the continuation of a carefree, infantile existence, which the same Marikoski compared to the relationship of Mammy's confetti and hyperprotective parents. To quote Moore, the qualified majority of our respected selves would like to have the same relationship with the system that the millennial generation has with their moms. Namely, having reliable access to a refrigerator, in critical love in your own room with a bluesly on the door, despising the system, your mom for being stupid and lacking in advancement. To consider oneself a member of a prestigious upper caste, to be responsible for nothing, but to enjoy recognition. In short, the qualified majority of our respected people wish to be bloggers influencers, sarcastically shouting at Putin and Nabiulin in the name of likes, but at the same time hoping that the card will not be blocked, we will be able to travel in the summer and the heating will be turned on in time. End of stats. What happens when such a majority wins elections, we have already seen in CE Europe and will see in Argentina. Our beloved country was saved from such a development in many respects by the fact that the secularists and oppositionists of the fatherland all along the way had a sense of their own importance of such a height that in no way allowed them to put forward a single candidate and group around him, as the Argentinian libertarians grouped around the advanced Milei. Plus, in addition, our authorities have for many years pursued a very healthy economic policy, the essence of which was recently described very succinctly by Ivan Danilov, to quote, many in the Russian media and political technological near-economy crowd, especially its schizopatriotic segment, sometimes publicly ask questions such as how it could happen that the monetarist Nabiulina was able to charm Putin and convince him that everything should be done like this. To run monetary policy like that and sacrifice everything for that damned stability and inflation targeting. The implication is that there is some way to change Putin's mind, who has supposedly fallen under the influence of the damned Westerners. In the West, by the way, a very different monetary policy is practiced. And that's why Bloomberg recently read there, and some financial analysts like to mock the Russian central bank. Using the thesis, the Russian central bank is stuck in the past and cosplaying the strategy of the Bundesbank, the central bank of Germany of the 1970s era, implying that this is something bad. It's essentially the same accusation or criticism that the Russian schizopatriots have, only in profile and expressed in smarter words. So, yours truly has a powerful suspicion that all those criticizing may be deliberately confusing cause and effect. It is not that Putin supports, and we can quote endlessly here, Nabiulina's position and fixation on the topic of curbing inflation because he was convinced of something by Nabiulina or the economic bloc of the government. It's the other way around. See, Putin was shaped as a future politician in German reality, from his work in the GDR to German business in post-Soviet St. Petersburg. If you have dealt with older generation German business or older generation German finance economists, and whether Aussie or Vassy, you can't help but notice that many have had it literally beaten into them to create the next idea. Without the inflationary crisis in Weimar Germany, there would have been no Nazi rise to power in Germany. But there would have been chances for political and economic stability or even development without the catastrophe of World War II. It was hammered in iron. Moreover, the success of the German economy, that very burger economic miracle, which was envied to the teeth by Soviet Philistines, was largely the product of the actions of the very Bundesbank of the 1970s, which then had its hands tied and then its brains blown out by national traitors in German politics under pressure from the United States. Plaza Accord plus the formation of the ECB, which led to the end of the economic miracle. Continues to quote Danilova, even yours truly, who lived in Germany on a visiting basis, and interacted with Germans from the financial world in a parodic manner, could not dodge conversations and reminiscences on the subject when interacting with the German world. And Putin lived in this world, and it is probably in this world that his ideas of the beautiful in terms of the functioning of a successful capitalist economy were formed. I'm not a telepath, but I can assume it's not. Nabiullina convinced Putin that imitating the Bundesbank of the 70s was a good thing, and Putin sought and found for himself those who would make him a Bundesbank on a non-glina. If you look at the situation from this angle, a lot of things in the biography of, for example, Putin's personal ex-assistant, Elvira Nabiullina, become clearer. But this is purely speculation. End quote. So, Argentina, the bonus described in the quote in the form of economic stability, does not have it. And it is this, coupled with the infantilism of the electorate there, that may play a key role in the successful transformation of a former potential BRICS member into an advanced concentration camp. For it is precisely the construction that both Mom's Libertarians and the Trotskyists in the White House are striving to build. In general, the prospects for the Latin American country are bright. Except this rainbow has 6 colors instead of 7. We'll get another example of what not to do. Plus the opportunity to watch the construction of a Latin American-style beggar's pantry online. It will be fun, but not for the Argentinians.